Hello, everyone, and welcome. I hope everyone is having a great morning this morning and a great day today. As we wait for a little bit longer for people to get signed in, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Madison Burnett. I'm a BCBA and I lead a professional development program, and I'll be supporting throughout today's webinar. In addition to that role, I work alongside other BCBAs on our clinician-led recruitment team, and I support in the effort of recruiting quality professionals to join our team. And before we begin, I would like to tell everyone a little bit about Manhattan Psychology Group. We were established in 2011, and we've continued to grow our team consisting of skilled adult and child psychologists, neuropsychologists, behavior analysts, special educators, licensed social workers, and behavior interventionists. As a team, we're committed to wraparound care, which includes our wide range of services from mental health and testing to ABA and educational services. This holistic approach allows us to address various needs and challenges with compassion and care. We provide services to clients out of our Upper West Side and Long Island City offices, in home, school, and clinic-based settings, as well as through telehealth. Our team is committed to serving individuals, couples, and families of all ages in diverse settings. We are also pleased to offer these free monthly webinars for parents and professionals where we will continue to learn and foster meaningful connections. Our vision at MPG is to create a future where individuals and their families feel supported, connected, and empowered, and our mission is to provide multidisciplinary, integrated support for individuals and their families to experience mental health, behavioral, and educational challenges. And now I'm excited to announce that MPG is hosting our inaugural one-day virtual mental health and ABA conference on October 8th, focusing on key benefits, strategies, and collaborative approaches in wraparound care. This fully virtual conference will start at 8:30 Eastern with a keynote address from Dr. Suzanne Go. We have a number of different invited presenters joining us, including Dr. Shane Spiker, Mary Jane Weiss, Amanda Kelly, and many more. Registration is now open, so take advantage of our early bird special before prices go up in a couple of weeks. You can scan the QR code, or I will be posting a link in the chat after I'm done speaking. All right, next are some housekeeping information about CEUs. For those seeking CEUs, you will need to attend this presentation in its entirety with a minimum of 50 cumulative minutes in order to receive a link with a post-webinar quiz and survey following the presentation. At the completion of this webinar, we will verify your attendance by reviewing the attendance logged in Zoom and send in an email with this link. As of January 1st, we have started charging a nominal fee for continuing education certificates. This webinar is still free to attend, but a $2.50 fee will be charged to receive the certificate. Any polls during this webinar are not required to get your CEU, but they are encouraged. We will be leaving the chat open today, but please post any questions you have in the Q&A to make sure that they are seen. And now I would like to introduce our presenters. Kate Weimer is a BCBA and serves as Vice President in the Executive Offices of the CEO at Brett Denovi and Associates. She combines evidence-based practices in ABA and OBM with a holistic lens to build high-performing systems, reduce staff burnout, and foster sustainable habits aligned with personal and professional goals. Her expertise spans crisis management, mergers and acquisitions, OBM consulting, district partnership, and training for professionals entering the ABA field. Brianna is a BCBA and is the Assistant Vice President of the Clinical Operations Development for BDA. As a BCBA, she supports new behavior techs and behavioral analysts as they get acclimated into their new roles. She also provides continued on-site support and training both in-home and in school environments. And now, without further ado, I will hand it over to Kate and Brianna.
Awesome. Thank you so much and welcome everybody. So as we're getting these slides up, thank you for the amazing intro. So welcome to today's presentation where we talk about intentional leadership. So embracing a 5 laws approach for personal and organizational outcomes. So Madison was kind enough to give those introductions so that we didn't have to this morning. For those of you that are on the East Coast, there's still 11 a.m. here. And with that, for starters, before we jump into things, we want you to think about intentional leadership starts with good organizational behavior management principles. So for right now, as a way for us to gauge where you're all working, what your expertise is in right now, or maybe some skills that you're looking to gain. If all of you can kind of just give a general overview of the current roles that you're in, that would be amazing so that we can kind of gauge this presentation based on that.
And we totally understand that today's lecture is more of like a presentation style. However, we are very collaborative and love to hear from you guys. So at any point, if you connect with something that we're saying, have a question or just a comment that you'd like to make, please drop it in the chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout the entirety of this training. So we'd love to hear from you guys as time goes on.
Okay, so it looks like all of you are at least in a supervising BCBA role, if not in higher leadership roles. So this is awesome because we're going to be able to touch on so many areas, no matter what position you're in, especially because all of you are in those leadership roles. So for starters, for those of you who are not quite familiar with organizational behavior management or OBM, I know it's definitely gained some popularity within our field over the last 5-ish years or so. So it's that subfield of ABI that focuses on improving workplace performance. And it's a practice that applies the principles of ABI to organizational settings, focusing on assessing and modifying work environments to improve employee performance and achieve better business outcomes by influencing employee behaviors through targeted interventions based on antecedents and consequences. And then that last piece, so those OBM practitioners use various strategies such as task clarification, goal setting, training, feedback, social praise, and rewards to modify employee behavior. So we're really looking at the organization as a whole, or we're looking at employee behavior rather than student or learner behavior that we're typically focused on, on a day-to-day basis in our clinical roles.
Okay, so the 5 principles of OBM. What I really love about breaking this down into those 5 principles is because OBM is such a blanket statement, and I feel like it can be extremely overwhelming, especially those who are maybe new to a supervisor role. It is so broad that sometimes you may think to yourself, I'm really not sure how to start or how to be a great supervisor. So being able to follow these very behavior analytics steps will ensure that you are successful. Because let's be honest, being a BCBA, a supervisor pretty much encompasses a lot of your day-to-day responsibilities. And if you're not able to do that effectively, you really won't be able to help the people underneath you to grow. And that's essentially what we're supposed to be doing, right? We're supposed to be paying that knowledge forward and growing clinicians to be the best that they can be. So with that being said, we'll shift on over to the next slide. All of these principles are covered in the 5 Scientific Laws of Life and Leadership book. If you guys are interested in learning more after our training, this is a great book to purchase and read, especially over the summer, because it is a really quick read. Yeah. It's really applicable, and the examples that the authors break down are really understandable. Like, as I read through the book, you see a lot of yourself mirroring through exactly what they're explaining. And it's really nice to see, not so much in a behavior analytic dictionary where it's like these terms and it's just constant jargon. It's just nice to see it at a baseline level and you can apply it to your everyday life. I digress. I'll get off my soapbox. But with that being said, pinpointing is the first law within the book that we do apply to OBM. And I'm going to roll through them a little bit more quickly on this slide. That way we can dive into them more deeply as the slides go on. The next one's going to be goal setting, and that could be even within yourself or with your supervisees. Self-monitoring and reporting out. To me, this may be the most difficult out of all of the tasks. And like I said, I'll get into it a little bit more later, but my reasoning is for this is because you have to be very honest with yourself. And if you're not able to do that now on a personal level, it's going to be really hard to do it in front of other people. And like I said, we'll dive into that a little bit more. Reciprocal feedback. So this is discussing with somebody the things that we're doing great and maybe not so great. And then that pay for performance. Sometimes this could be a little confusing because immediately you hear pay and you think dollar sign, but that's not essentially what that means. Pay for performance is just our way of saying reinforcement. Okay. Like I said, we're going to dive into those topics a little bit more deeply now. Please drop any questions you have in the chat as we begin to discuss them.
So then that pinpointing. So essentially you're looking at that long term. So kind of like a GPS. So where do you want to end up, right? So making sure you have that target behavior in observable, measurable terms. It helps to ensure accurate identification and measurement of specific behaviors, making data collection objective and seamless. So what I mean by this is, making sure that you set everyone up for success and set your systems up for success before you just start tracking and reporting out on these things. You could have the best system, but if you're moving in the wrong direction, just like if you put the wrong address in a GPS, you're not going to see the correct outcome. So this is going to be really important when you're getting goals set up with your team, with your supervisees, or even for yourself as a leader.
And before you move on, I really love how you mentioned a Google Maps comparison, because if you take pinpointing, what you can really do is apply it to a Google Maps, right? So if you had said to somebody, I'd like to go to the beach. Bree and I are from New Jersey, so the beach is like a huge thing for us down here. If anybody is in the chat and from New Jersey. But with that being said, if you said, I want to go to the beach, you could end up anywhere in New Jersey on the coastline. So you really want to be specific. You want a complete address. If you're going to Asbury, you'd want a complete address to get to the Asbury Boardwalk or the Asbury Beach. The more specific you get, the more likely you'll be successful when you're pinpointing, because you can end up somewhere else or not really have those clear expectations for yourself or your supervisee when you're creating those goals. So the more specific you can be from the very beginning, from the jump essentially, the more successful everybody else will be underneath you and you will be as well. And that follows suit with the goal setting, right? So this is that second law within those 5 scientific laws of life and leadership, and makes us successful within OBM. So after you pinpoint exactly what it is that you're looking to establish, that goal, we're going to break it down even more. Like I said, the more specific we can get with these, the more likely you will be to achieve it and your supervisees underneath you. So establish those specific performance benchmarks that the individual or group strive to achieve. Goals can vary in complexity, ranging from simple level objectives to multi-tiered goals, and they can be determined individually or collectively. If you have somebody underneath you, they should be a part of this from the very beginning, because it creates that buy-in. You don't want to just be picking goals from some type of generic goal bank for your RBTs underneath you or your up-and-coming BCBAs, because oftentimes when we do so, there is no buy-in, and then they're not as invested in completing that goal. And usually those goals are to help you out as well. Like I said, these are to help your clinicians grow. And as they grow, you can either have things taken off your plate as the supervisor, or you don't have to check in with them as much, so you gain more time. So having that investment in those goals from the very beginning and making that success easier to get to is imperative for the overall OBM model. As you can see in here in the definition, we can go from simple level objectives to multi-tiered goals. If your RBT supervisor or up and coming BCBA is coming to you and they have this overall arching goal that is huge, it would be great for them to accomplish. However, you as a supervisor have to sit back and say, I know burnout is real. I know sometimes our supervisees have the ability to put the cart before the horse. So let's break this goal down even smaller. Let's make checkpoints for them. Make the goal as tiny as possible so they're more likely to contact reinforcement early on and have that behavior momentum to want to continue to that overarching goal that they may have for themselves.
And then that next piece, so like we talked about before, self-monitoring and reporting out. This is the hardest, in my opinion, because you or whoever is reporting out on their specific goals has to be honest with themselves. So you're really monitoring your own behavior. So you're observing, you're recording and evaluating your own behavior, whether it's on a personal goal or a professional goal. I always say this is the hardest one because you have to be open and honest and be ready for that feedback if maybe you didn't hit that goal, or ready for that corrective feedback if you didn't hit that goal. So once you've self-monitored or you're collecting data on some measure of behavior, you're going to be reporting out to somebody. So chances are, like I said, if you're those leaders, your supervisees, your trainees are going to be reporting out to you on some of their goals or key performance indicators that they're currently working on. You as that leader should also have a set of goals that you have maybe a mentor, a coach, or someone above you that you're able to report out to just for kind of like that temperature check. So I know even for myself and Kate, we might report out to each other or in some kind of way, just to kind of get that temperature check and know, okay, there's no observer drift going on here either. So when you're reporting out, you're presenting that information, updates or findings about your behavior or the performance that you're tracking.
And when you're setting up those self-monitoring and reporting out initiatives for your staff and for yourself, make sure those expectations are extremely clear,
Yes.
right? So if the waters are a little muddy, you may have problems down the line. If you had this expectation in your head that your staff are going to be reporting out to you on a daily basis, and you're not getting that report out from them, you're following up with them, and they're not sure why you're doing that, and they, in their mind, thought, well, I thought this was a weekly occurrence. Again, the more details you have, the better. You want everything to be laid out like a Wayfair instruction manual for getting a new piece of furniture. You want it to be down to like photos. You want it to be able to be followed by somebody who has never done this before. Expectations are completely clear. You know, part A is supposed to fit into part B, and then that leads to part C. And before you even implement these plans, you want to make sure that you roll out those directions with your supervisees. Go over each detail with them. Ask them if they have questions. Again, this is going to make you more successful in the long run. Those pre-planning meetings are crucial. Making sure everybody's on the same page. That way, later on down the line, you're less likely to run into these obstacles or roadblocks. Again, proactivity is the game here. Being reactive when it comes to OBM means digging yourself out of a hole, costing you time. And for a lot of our CEOs here within the chat, it can cost you a lot of money too. So the more opportunities you have to implement these safe nets on the forefront is going to be so beneficial for you. Okay. Reciprocal feedback. And don't be confused with this. You as a supervisor will also be receiving feedback. We'll dive into that a little bit more as the slides go on to talk about what that can look like. However, bidirectional exchange of performance-related information between individuals, again, supervisors and supervisees, unlike traditional indirect feedback, where only the supervisor provides feedback to the supervisee, it will be provided to you as well. So both parties are giving corrective and positive feedback at the same time. And you may be thinking to yourself, as a supervisor, why is this important for me? I'm in this higher leadership role. Why should I be getting feedback when they're the ones learning? Every supervisee is going to be different. Their plan is going to be idiosyncratic. Their preferences are going to be idiosyncratic. So you being able to shapeshift as a supervisor and provide them what they need is going to look different from person to person. And the only way you're really going to be able to learn that is if you receive feedback from them on an ongoing basis. I have a couple RBTs underneath me, and I've began to learn their preferences when it comes to feedback, not only working closely with them and being consistent, but also asking for their feedback. And sometimes that may be uncomfortable. Sometimes you may not get a direct answer right away, but you just opening that door shows that you're able to be collaborative and welcome that as time goes on. Like I said, many of my supervisees have different preferences when it comes to feedback. Some want it directly in the moment. If I shoot them a text and say, hey, let's talk later, that sets them off. Anxiety through the roof, 0 to 10. I'm getting texts and phone calls. I'm free to talk now. I know many of us are like that as well, including myself. So those type of supervisees, if I have something to say, I'm going to tell them either in the moment because I know that they would rather have that, or wait until later before telling them I have to tell them something so I don't cause them more anxiety throughout the day. Others are really invested in what they're doing, and me giving feedback in the moment may set off their flow. As long as it's not a detriment to the learner or a safety issue or concern, sometimes I'll hold that feedback until later due to that because I may set off their flow. Maybe they have a little bit of a sensitivity when it comes to feedback in the moment, and they have to digest it throughout the remainder of their day, and they don't like to do that when working with a learner. So again, learning those preferences, asking up front. I will say too, giving feedback and receiving feedback is so much easier when you have a rapport with that supervisee. So if you have the opportunity to pair with them, just like you would with any of your learners, that is highly recommended as well. Sometimes that comes down to having brief conversations with people. I know that's not easy to do sometimes in the work environment because oftentimes learners popping up asking a question while you're having a conversation, or maybe you get radioed on the walkie and it makes things a little bit more difficult. But just taking the time to ask people how their weekend was, if anybody has kids, asking them how their kids are doing. Pets is also a big thing, vacations, school breaks, just being a human being, right? Asking people how they're feeling is a great way to build rapport and what they did over the weekend.
And then this last piece, so that pay for performance. So like Kate mentioned earlier, sometimes that pay for performance could be in the form of a bonus, a raise, a promotion within your organization. However, that's not always going to be the case. It's just going to be the reinforcement that you receive as a result of you engaging in those behaviors that you set out to track and report out on. So employees are potentially, like I said, might receive their earnings based on individual performance rather than the amount of time worked. So in a typical OBM model, we are that pay for performance model, right? So we are providing employees with compensation based on their overall performance. So even maybe if someone's been at your organization for a year, that doesn't mean they automatically get a raise because, for example, if Kate and I, we've been here the same amount of time, if maybe Kate puts in more work than I do, we shouldn't both get the same raise, right? So it should be kind of scaled based on their overall performance and maybe based on, what they're bringing to that company, right? So are they bringing in new clients? Are they bringing in new contracts? What does that look like? And really what it boils down to is you're providing reinforcement for achieving the desired outcomes. An example that might work better when maybe you're not going to be providing someone with a bonus or, a pay raise. For example, if maybe that staff's goal is that their treatment integrity is going to go up to, 90% treatment integrity over maybe a 3-month period, right? So that pay for performance for them is going to be, hey, my learner's improving. We're seeing more replacement behaviors. We're seeing a decrease in some of those more challenging behaviors. You're not necessarily going to get a pay raise just because your treatment integrity went up, or you're not going to get a bonus because of that. However, it kind of pays itself forward by being able to see that learner progress.
Also, sorry,
That's okay.
another point for pay for performance, again, is to realize that everybody is different.
Yes.
We've seen a huge shift, and I hate to bring it up, of reinforcers when it comes to staff after COVID. A lot of times pre-COVID, staff really enjoyed either staff appreciation outings, bonuses or salary increases, opportunities to attend free CEU events. Those were the main highest preferred reinforcers that we got from staff. However, after COVID, we've seen a big push for PTO.
Yep.
And a lot of this is due to the fact that, and the only reason why I know this is because we constantly monitor this and ask staff for feedback to make sure that our pay for performance or our reinforcers are aligning with their goals, ethics, and values. But a lot of things that we've heard from staff after COVID was, I want to spend more time with my family. It's almost like this shift in their importance was not so much more work related and financially motivated. It was more so like, I want to buy more time back with my family. So being conscious to those things too. Now, I'm not going to say that we don't value money anymore as you here at BDA, because there are some people that still value those monetary bonuses or those CEU events or those staff team building opportunities. But that's why it's good to have a range of pay for performance for staff, because if we're only offering one type of reinforcer, our plan will most likely, again, not be effective. Just like our learners that we work with in a clinic or at a school, we don't just have one blanket reinforcer. We have a reinforcer preference assessment to see what those learners really value, and we should be doing the same thing for our staff too.
Any questions so far? Comments, concerns? Okay.
Okay. So your role as the supervisor. So I'm going to go over 2 bullet points that you should be focusing on prior to implementing these 5 scientific laws of life and leadership. One, you want to make sure that before taking on a supervisee, that your company's mission, values, and goals are aligned. You may be thinking, why is this important? As long as we're acting upon the BACB ethics code, we should be good to go. I think that's an overstatement and setting you up for a lot of hardship, because as you get to know somebody and seeing where their vision lines and where they want to end up, maybe that doesn't align with your organization, and that's okay. Sometimes we come in contact with people or learners or staff that our goals don't align, and that maybe means that this would not be a sustainable relationship. So we want to make sure we're being as upfront as possible and talking about those things before entering any type of contractual relationship or supervisor-supervisee relationship. As I stated earlier, be clear with your expected results. Again, this is bolded for a reason. Make sure you underline it, highlight it, because I think oftentimes this gets glazed over. We're all very busy. And as a BCBA, that never changes, but that doesn't mean we should lack on those clear expectations. We harp on them for providing ABA analytic services to our learners, and I don't think our staff should not get that as well. So the more clear you can be, as I said earlier, with those safety nets, the more likely you will be successful, and there will be less of those miscommunications and hardships down the road. Okay. As we had stated earlier, we want to pinpoint as if we're trying to drive to the beach, right? We want to make sure we get to the right beach. So pinpoint those behaviors and actions that you must engage in to achieve those results, and the results of that you lead. This shouldn't just be done with your supervisees. This should be done with you as well, especially for those supervising multiple people underneath you. You want to make sure that you're acting within a realm that you're setting yourself up for success. If you take on too many supervisees and you don't pinpoint what your goal is when supervising them, you may get lost in the sauce and actually wind up becoming a very crummy supervisor. So be clear with your expectations for yourself and really pinpoint what your threshold is as a supervisor. What my threshold is different from what Bree's is. So if I say to myself, with my current caseload, I can take on 4 supervisees, that may be the only amount that I can take on, and that's okay. Especially for those who are starting out, take on 1. Because as you begin to see, there's a lot of indirect time that you're going to be spending with them that isn't encompassed in your full week workload. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that you're, again, setting yourself up for success, because if you're not set up for success, your clinicians can't be. Then following suit, after you're pinpointing and you've gotten to the beach, you want to make sure you're setting goals for yourself and your technicians, so everyone is clear on their goals and how that can impact their progress. Again, if these goals are gigantic, we want to make sure that we are breaking them down into smaller ones to set our supervisees up as stepping stones to reach the larger overarching goal. Okay. After we're able to goal set, like we had said earlier, self-monitoring and reporting out is going to be a huge part of that system. It's not going to be successful without it. And this self-monitoring and reporting out is for yourself and the technicians to create visibility and drive behavior towards the intended outcomes. This is your data collection as a BCBA, so it doesn't just go for our learners or our stakeholders. This goes for our staff too. You want to make sure that those self-monitoring behaviors are clear, like an operational definition, and what those reporting out behaviors should look like. So putting together a data collection system, and then maybe it's visual, that they graph their own behavior. Maybe it's a text message to you weekly saying, hey, I did X, Y, and Z. But again, that should be very clear and the expectation should be put up front. Then that feedback piece. As you begin to collect that data and analyze it from the self-monitoring and reporting out, that feedback loop is going to come in, and that's going to be a consistent rinse and repeat process. You as a supervisor should be consulting feedback from your supervisees to make sure you're constantly giving them and showing up for what they need, as well as providing them with that constructive feedback. When we're providing constructive feedback, we don't want to underestimate the importance of positive praise as well, to let them know, hey, what you're doing is amazing. You're going in the right direction. I love how you did X, Y, and Z. This doesn't have to be just verbal. Here at BDA, we have a Facebook culture page, as well as a bunch of group me's as well, sectioned out between counties. I will tell you, our culture page is more so encompassing of everybody within the company, which is super cool because it ties us all together on a virtual platform. And then for those smaller groups, we'll do them between states and counties. But if somebody's doing a really awesome job, oftentimes you'll see supervisors give them a public shout out on one of these platforms. It's a really nice way to show somebody that you appreciate them and seeing what they're doing, and also like clapping for them on a grander scale rather than just in person. I think I went a little bit ahead, but like I said, make sure that we're positively reinforcing those behaviors when possible. Again, consider that pay for performance strategy. It doesn't always have to be a monetary bonus. We want to make sure we're taking into consideration what it is that that person prefers. Maybe it is a couple hours of PTO time, or maybe it is a free CEU event, but you won't know unless you ask or put out some type of survey to see exactly what your supervisees are looking for. And then finally, meet with your coach regularly to evaluate the effects of this OBM system. This is where that feedback loop comes back in. I do know one of our staff members here at BDA does an excellent job with this. She sends out an anonymous Google survey to all of her supervisees. This way, it doesn't kind of put a heavy load on them to be upfront and honest with you, maybe either in person or just the sheer fact that it's anonymous. I think that's amazing. It gives people to be able to speak candidly without feeling like they're going to damage their relationship with you. Then she checks over the survey after it goes out automatically. Again, another way AI really does take that response effort off you as a supervisor. It just goes out automatically a certain times a month or bi-monthly. And then she's able to read over these responses and internalize them, think on them. Again, it's out of the moment. So it really gives you the opportunity to reflect for as long as you need and figure out different ways to support people based upon their anonymous feedback.
So then this next part, I would like to ask all of you, drop it in the chat. How do we know we're being a great supervisor within our roles as leaders? There's no wrong answers here.
And if I see an anonymous Google survey, I'm going to know somebody took,
which is okay.
took my talking point.
We want to make sure that we're giving you some, resources and tools leaving here. So active listening, we ask the supervisee, taking feedback, applying those changes. Yes, that's huge. You can accept that feedback, but if you don't apply it for next time, then nothing changed and you're not going to be able to progress with your, those that you're leading. Ask for feedback. Oh, your supervisees look forward to supervision. Yes, if they're dreading supervision, maybe that's a way for us to look at ourselves and say, how can I be a better supervisor? Or what am I doing that's maybe making them dread supervision? Results everyone is happy with, okay. And maybe if they're not super happy with, maybe they're accepting of it, because we know sometimes we can't make everyone happy at once. However, if they're given an outcome that they might not be happy with, they're still, able to continue on within their role. Team is growing, you're growing in your skill set. People come with questions. Yes, that's huge. If you're continuously having those that you lead not come with questions and they're just like, nope, everything is good. That's almost like a way for you to be like, hey, I think we need to do a temperature check here because things are not good if no one's ever coming with questions and people are just kind of chugging along. You should be getting feedback from them. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's a really great point because when we're not getting feedback, it's like staff aren't looking to grow and they're just looking to fly under the radar.
Yeah.
So if you're constantly seeing that, look at yourself as a supervisor to say, am I giving them, a space to be able to talk? Are they comfortable enough with me with a supervisor? Maybe that's when you start to think of a more anonymous way to get feedback. That way you can get a more reliable source of what exactly it is that they're thinking or the questions that they may have.
Successful staff and feedback supervise these performance groups. Yes. Just like if we are working with our learners and their behavior is not improving over a time period, we're going to look and say, okay, what do we need to change, modify, terminate within their programming? Same thing with any of one that we're leading. What might we need to do with them? Are we changing something? Are we revamping the whole thing? Are we, maybe terminating something? That's really important when you are in those leadership roles. Asking for feedback, they're saying they feel comfortable coming to you and giving you feedback. Yes, if you have supervisees that are comfortable giving you feedback on a regular basis, whether it's corrective or positive, that's a huge win for you as a supervisor. When people who don't know what we do as professionals make comments that they see improvements, yes. I'm sure many of you have had this conversation where people are like, what do you do for a living again? And a lot of times it's like, I just work with kids, because you don't want to get into it. But if people can see that you're making those improvements, that's huge. Let's see, what else? Teams growing in performance and skill set. Oh, supervisees request supervision. So yes, definitely take that as a compliment to you as a leader is when people are asking you for supervision, for mentorship, because that means that you're making a difference for them and they want to learn and grow more from you. The people we supervise perform the skills we teach. Yes, they seek us out to ask for help. Healthy environments and staff retention. Yes, that's huge. We know in the field of ABA that the burnout rate is really high and the retention rate isn't so excellent at times. I've learned I'm doing a good job when my supervisees feel supported, feel confident what they're doing, will see results.
I heard you say the word burnout. Sometimes that comes up in the midst of goal setting and having this whole process, and that's okay. We're human beings. Burnout is not something that is easily navigated, and that's just because to be able to be proactive and put together a plan for yourself, it's very hard to mirror that from what somebody else is doing, again, because everybody's preferences and thresholds look different. So if you find that your supervisee is experiencing burnout throughout this 5 scientific laws of life and leadership, sometimes maybe a hard pause for them just due to acts of God, family emergencies, maybe a restrictive financial state. Sometimes that affects the goal, right? And we didn't see those things. Being compassionate, a listening ear. Sometimes we don't talk about that enough. As a supervisor, sometimes you have to put on a therapist hat, not officially, but just to be an active listener is so important. It'll build that rapport, help them navigate, right? Say, I totally understand where you're coming from. Why don't we put a pause on this for this time being and we'll revisit it in a week. Don't stress about reporting out. Again, you being human and understanding is going to go so much farther as a supervisor than it's going to be as if you just had that supervisor hat on 24/7. You have to be understandable and meet people where they're at because oftentimes our capabilities and abilities are different. I will just tell you a personal story. I had one supervisee underneath me one year where we were at a social outing for staff and a team building event. And she pulled me aside and said, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you this year being a supervisor. I've not only been able to reach my goals, but I've been able to come to you each time one of my kids were sick. And as a supervisor, you told me, don't worry about it, take care of your family, and I'll step in and assist you while you have to do X, Y, and Z. And she almost started crying. She was like, I just want to tell you I've never had that before. And it means the world to me. I almost was in tears myself because nobody's ever even given me a compliment to say, like, it was not within my job responsibilities, but you did something that made my life so much easier. And I value you so much more for that. So just keep those things in mind as a supervisor. We don't always have to be so steadfast, data analytic. Be a human too. Be understanding. Meet people where they're at.
And then some other things that are on here. So supervisees become supervisors to newer team members. Yes, so you're continuing to grow your team because now they're confident to become leaders. People come up with new ideas or suggestions. Kind of to Kate's point, behavior technicians feel heard. Open to feedback, discuss results, and work together. Behavior techs are happy. There's open communication. Supervisees feel empowered to help other staff. Yes. And they're comfortable bringing up concerns and they trust you. So these are all great qualities. And now we're going to get into how do we break down some of these key performance indicators or KPIs as a supervisor, and how do we set our staff up for success? Now, again, this is a very long list. So pick a couple of them. Don't say we have to do all these at once, or we're not being a good supervisor. Pick a few, just like with our learners. We're not doing every goal possible. We're starting small and then we're working our way up from there.
And like I had said earlier, the clear expectations point, it could be very broad. So this is our way of helping you break down what some of those clear expectations can look like when we're deriving these goals.
So then those pinpointed expectations. So we're going to break it down into a handful of buckets. So client progress, staff satisfaction and support, parent satisfaction, time management and utilization, professionalism, and liability management. So go ahead.
I was going to say, sometimes when you meet with staff too, you'll say, what's something that you want to work on? And they'll say, I don't know. So
Yes.
this is a really great way for you guys to save this as a resource, because like we said, there's a lot of subcategories under each one of these initial ones to pull from. Maybe observe your supervisees and say, I see that they're lacking in client progress when it comes to X, Y, and Z. So why don't I present these goals to them and say, how do you feel about these? And then kind of volley that ball in their court and see what they have to say. Because sometimes you do meet with staff and they don't have much to give. So you have to start that behavior momentum and give them some visuals or maybe some data that you've collected and said, hey, I've noticed you've been late a couple times. Maybe we start working on that.
And when we're going through these pinpointed expectations, so this is going to be such a mix of goals. Some of these goals are going to be applicable to your behavior techs. Some maybe your entry level BCBAs or other BCBAs that are working under you if you're more of a clinical director or CEO position. And then some of these goals are going to apply to you as that leader, depending on where you're at within your career as well. So starting with that client progress. So looking at, okay, titration of services, we know, especially anyone on this call that's working with insurance companies, that we need to make sure that we're making as much progress with our learners as we can before we have to start titrating those services. Any plan that we're writing has to have those goals for titration in there. So what can we do from a client perspective to make sure that this is happening in an effective way? Monitoring, how would we do that? Monitoring client data and progress regularly, make adjustments as needed. Again, your behavior techs might not be making those adjustments, but they might help you monitor that client data. Ensure goals are appropriate and socially significant. All prescribed hours are delivered to the client. I know this is easier said than done. There could be so many reasons why you're not able to deliver all those hours to the client. Maybe an RVT left, maybe it's based on the times that the family is available and you're trying to line someone else up, but essentially doing it to the best of your ability. And then 50 to 100 quality learning opportunities per hour. So when you're looking at this, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing discrete trial and you're giving them 50 to 100 learning opportunities. Think about it from a naturalistic teaching approach. There are so many opportunities for learning within a client's environment that you want to make sure that your staff are capitalizing on that to the best of their ability. Now, again, a newer staff who it's their first day in the field isn't going to be as comfortable with this as maybe a well-seasoned staff who's been around for a while or is working with that client for a while. And then this last one, so the technician has strong rapport and is a source of positive reinforcement. So I'm sure all of you have been there where you walk into one of your sessions and maybe the technician says, hey, I don't think this is going to work out, or I'm not sure, I can't get any buy-in from this client, I'm not sure what's going on. And what it comes down to is they haven't paired well with them. So for some of my staff, maybe it's not a good fit and maybe we, move some things around and we assign a new staff. Or if I think we can maybe work this out, we're going to start collecting data there. Collect data on pairing. How are they able, do they have the ability to do that? Is it a skill that they need to work on in general, or is it maybe specific to this client?
This next section of staff satisfaction and support, this is going to help your organization also be sustainable over a long period of time. And this is just due to the fact that, like I had brought up earlier, it will save you time, money, and then making sure that you don't have high turnover when it comes to services or staff. So first and foremost, you want to make sure that we're keeping scores high on staff satisfaction surveys. We do have these go out at BDA as well. It is based upon a Likert scale, and we keep record of staff's ongoing feedback. That way, if we start to see a drop in their current baseline or something that we've seen in the past, we have somebody reach out to them immediately and say, hey, what's going on? How can we help you? And of course, issues range from person to person, and we do everything we can as a company to rectify that. Especially if our staff are well trained and they're putting forth their best effort, why would you not, as an organization, prioritize their wants and needs? This will also lead to high retention rates with your CAs. We do know within the field of ABA, turnover is a very high thing when it comes to ABA companies, just due to the fact that we've talked about this throughout the training. Burnout rates are extremely high. Resources can be extremely low, depending on what the organization has set up for your CAs. And when we say CAs, we mean RBTs. We call them clinical associates here at BDA. So, excuse the small terminology difference, but some things that fall underneath that are making sure that your techs know how to advance and be eligible for those pay raises within their career. Sometimes these aren't as straightforward, and that leads to burnout, right? Mm-hmm. You have a lot of staff that try real hard, and when they feel unseen, guess what? The first thing they're going to start doing is search for somewhere that they get compensated more for their hard efforts. And especially if they're sitting next to somebody who's making just as much money as them and not doing as much. So you want to make sure you have a good handle on these things. Like we had stated earlier, they know the goals that they're working on. Those clear expectations have been set up for them on how they can advance and get that raise. They know who their coach is. Do you know how frustrating it is to want to grow within a space? And I can speak from personal experience and say, I don't know who to go to for this. Or I went to 3 or 4 people and no one's helped me. People often jump ship because they feel stagnant, that they can't grow, that they've hit a wall. They've hit that glass ceiling, right? So giving them the options to say, like, you want X, Y, and Z, these are the people that you should go to. They're going to help you get there. It really gives staff the ability to like see a future at a company. And if they can't, again, that's when they start researching other places to go. Tech receives consistent overlap and support. This is a big one. I know as supervisors, again, we're super busy, and a lot of times things get thrown on our plate that we didn't exactly plan for or schedule for. That doesn't mean the people underneath us should take a hit. It's not their fault. I've worked in an ABA company and even in districts where I felt like I never saw my supervisor. Oftentimes our CAs or RBTs are our boots on the ground. They're dealing with the behaviors way more often than we are. We only get a snapshot of things when we come and overlap with them. So the fact that they're dealing with some of these extreme behaviors and not feeling like they have somebody that they can lean on, someone to support them, maybe step in. Right? We don't want to be those clipboard BCBAs and supervisors. We want to show them that we're a team player. And the only way that you can do that is being personable and actually there in person. I know a lot of us are providing that virtual support, but nothing, and I will say this again and again, nothing will replace you being in person. It does so much more for your rapport, and it does so much more for the people underneath us to feel seen and heard when you show up there. This is probably one of the largest subcategories that we have, so bear with us. We want to make sure our techs receive consistent behavior skills training. Again, if we're seeing a deficit, implement behavior skills training. Explain the rationale, why we're doing that. Sometimes we do have to pick goals for staff. I know the buy-in won't be there as much, but if it's impeding their ability to provide that gold standard of services, then we have to do that. But explaining that why, that rationale, and giving them that breakdown of steps of behavior skills training is so important and will help the buying process too. Make sure that your staff have all of the resources and materials to run those client goals. How frustrating is that? And I'm sure many of you have been there before where a BCBA says, all right, this is what we're doing. Here's the protocol. Read it over and let me know how it goes. And you start reading through it and you're like, I don't have these materials. It shouldn't fall on your staff to create them, find them, or cultivate them. It really does fall on you as the supervisor. If we're lacking in things, let them know, hey, I'll have this for you in X amount of time. And make sure you're consistent and you can follow through with those things. Oftentimes, I feel like supervisors are unreachable or they give these fake timelines in the moment. Like you give this short-term in the moment solution, but it doesn't actually sustain and there's no follow through. And I feel like that's what burns staff out more than anything. You need to be consistent so that they know they can count on you. And I think Paige had brought this up before, so they can trust you. It's so important for your rapport. And then that, again, that sustainability of services over time. That falls into this next category, the responsiveness from your supervisor. As a supervisor, you don't want to be one of those people that somebody texts you and they don't reach out to you for days. If you have a lot going on your plate, it takes 10 seconds to reach out to someone to say, hey, I'm totally swamped today. I'm not going to be able to get to this, but I promise you that I will be there tomorrow morning and we can work through this problem. That's going to be so much better than you leaving their text unread and then just showing up the next day. Let people know where you're at and that they're heard and that they're seen and that you're going to come through for them. Clear protocols to run client programs and behavior intervention programs. Again, make sure that your staff are set up for success. If you're giving them a plan, make sure that they have all of the things they need to run it, because how stressful is that? If your staff are going to sit down in session and realizing, I don't have all of the things I need to do exactly what it is I'm here to do. And then the appropriateness and clear end goals for skill acquisition goals. Again, we want to be clear and to the point as possible across all aspects of being a supervisor, and this one follows suit.
And then this next piece are those parent satisfaction goals. So again, especially when you're working in that home setting and you're working collaboratively with families, you want to make sure that you're getting a temperature check on your families. So here at BDA, we do parent check-in calls where someone from our admin team reaches out and does check-in calls. So they don't know the family, is not as familiar with them. So they feel actually more comfortable giving the feedback because they're not someone who's in their home week in and week out. So high levels of satisfaction on survey or when asked. And I know, so I'm going to sidebar for a second. We have about 7 minutes left. If you have questions, if you want to start thinking about your questions and putting them in the chat now, we will, take those questions at the end, but start thinking about that and filling the chat as we're going through here. That next piece is healthy collaboration with their clinical team on their child's program. Understanding an agreement with their child's goals and programs. So this is huge, right? You should be writing a treatment plan in collaboration with those families. It shouldn't be a surprise when they get a copy of it and they're like, I didn't talk about this with you as the BCBA, or no, that's not feasible for me as a caregiver training goal because I work all day, or whatever the case may be. So making sure that there is that healthy collaboration and they understand what those expectations are. Are those parents seeing results of ABA treatment? Responsiveness to parent communication. So that being said, when you're reaching out to the family, are they responding in a timely manner? If they're not responding, is there a reason why? Is it due to the fact that they're unsatisfied with services, or maybe they're so overwhelmed, they're just not able to respond? But either way, it's still good data for us to know that. And then this last piece, so time management, good attendance, and high utilization. So making sure that you as that supervisor are getting out on a regular basis with the hours that you are authorized to do so, and making sure to the best of your ability that your tech hours are also being utilized to the best of your ability within the resources that you have.
Okay, moving on to time management and utilization. For the sake of time, I'm going to breeze through these a little bit more quickly, especially being that they are more like core job responsibilities. So first and foremost, you want to ensure that we have good attendance on cases. Make sure that your staff are showing up. Sometimes that means checking their schedules or doing quick check-ins, but you want to make sure that that's happening. Converting your sessions and billing appropriately. Your supervisees fall underneath you, therefore you're responsible for them. Making sure that they're accurately billing and not committing any type of insurance fraud, but also converting your sessions on time so you as an organization can be compensated appropriately and in a timely way, essentially. Next, you want to make sure, again, this follows suit throughout this entire thing, respond to calls, texts, and emails in a timely fashion. We tell our staff, please, within 24 hours, make sure that you're responding to things. Turning in treatment plans or progress notes in on time. This can delay of services if we're not doing so. So we want to make sure that we're serving the family appropriately. We want to make sure that we're managing client hours to ensure high utilization. Without doing so, you're kind of doing a disservice to the family, and we're not giving them exactly the support that they deserve. And then lastly, reviewing those client updates and data regularly. This is your job as a BCBA first and foremost, but we want to make sure the data is accurately representing what's going on as well on a consistent basis.
And then that professionalism piece. So with that, you want to be a pro in your appearance, communication, and actions. So you as that BCBA, and same thing for all of your staff, especially your techs. I do a lot with onboarding and new hire orientation here at BDA. So I find myself having a lot of these conversations. What does dress code look like? Are you adhering to dress code? Down to maybe what shoes are on your feet for safety reasons. So making sure that you're able to do that for both yourself and your staff. You want to be a good model with that appearance, communication, and actions. And then timely and professional communication, like we touched on across the board for, anyone that you lead or any families or maybe school districts or any stakeholders that you're having communication with. You want to have good organization of programs and your cases. So find a system that works for you. I use a lot of digital organization systems. Kate has a pen and paper planner where she has all of her systems organized that way. So it doesn't matter what you're using, but find a system that works for you. Have appropriate boundaries with staff and parents. This is part of our ethics code. So you want to make sure that you're maintaining those boundaries with both staff and parents. I say this all the time, especially to newly certified BCBAs. Yesterday, you were a behavior tech. Today, you're a BCBA. You are their supervisor. So find that boundary. And a lot of times it can be difficult for them. So teaching them how to do that and maintain those new boundaries that they have. Receive feedback professionally. I say to all of my staff and anyone that I'm leading, how you respond says more about you than it does about them. So when you're receiving feedback, you might be angry, you might be upset, you might think that, I don't know if this applies. Go be angry and vent to someone that is not attached to whatever it is going on. We always say complain up, don't complain down for this reason. If you're complaining down to your techs, they're going to think the sky is falling and, oh my gosh, I'm stressed, this, that, and everything else. Keep that to yourself and talk to someone that you're able to discuss these things with. And then reach out to other team members for collaboration and coordination of care. Charlene said, when setting boundaries, be open about it so people understand it. Yes, why you're not friends on social media, that's huge. The amount of, especially parents over the years that have tried to friend me on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be. Same thing with some of my learners as they've gotten older. They found me on various social media platforms, and I've had to go in and remove them or, block them from my page for that reason.
I think that's an amazing segue to liability management. Like I said, I know we're running to the very end here, so let me go through these quite quickly. Don't underestimate the importance of documentation. You are subject to human error and behavior drift. So the more accurately you document things within a short time frame, the more likely you can reflect back on your notes. With that being said, as a supervisor, you want to make sure that you're auditing those session notes with everybody underneath you, making sure things have parent signatures to make sure that they have seen it and that they can never say that they have not. Timesheets and client data. You want to make sure that there is communication for any injuries, complaints, or information shared to you and your director. You want to make sure that if staff come to you saying that there was a behavior today or a restraint that occurred, these things are being documented on an ongoing basis. So you have a running record, again, to reflect back on them if in the case it's needed in the future. Communicate staffing needs in a timely manner. Again, parents are paying for these services. Therefore, if they're requesting an increase, we should be doing our best to fill those needs to make sure that they get that highest quality of care, because that essentially leads to that stakeholder feedback and that sustainability again. Communicate fraudulent billing or documentation to a director or HR. Again, this is a huge, huge thing. You are liable for the people underneath you. Anything that has to do with insurance fraud has the ability to escalate to a very big issue. So you want to make sure that these things are being documented in a timely manner. And then finally, ensure your timesheets and payroll are accurate. Again, that leads to fraudulent billing and can be a very big issue. So please make sure that you guys are accurately looking at these things and taking appropriate action if needed.
And with that, we have come to an end here. So if you want to connect with us further, feel free to connect with us. I saw Amanda raise her hand. I don't believe you'll be able to come off mute because I know this is a webinar version. However, if you want to type it in the chat, if you want to connect with us further, by all means, go ahead. I'm going to put our emails in the chat as well, just so you have them. I know that a copy of the slides was dropped in the chat as well, so you have access to those. So CEUs, I believe you'll receive information regarding the CEU piece. And then I'm putting,
And I know we had limited time for questions today, so if you do email us them or drop them in the chat now, Brianna and I will make sure to get back to you with a more purposeful answer rather than answering it very quickly right now. But we appreciate everybody coming out on a Monday and
yes.
listening to us speak. I know we weren't the original speakers, but we appreciate all of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for presenting today. If you do have any questions, please drop them in the chat or the Q&A, and I'd be happy to either send them over if it comes over after you both sign off, or they can email you directly. But
Awesome.
thank you everyone for joining us.